Ellie and Endo, Episode 1, Room to Roam. Ellie sat by the window, arms crossed, watching the village of Levelton stir to life. Her mother bustled about the kitchen, her mother's DiaPal, the smothering bear named Hogs, always close by. The massive bear had always hovered over Ellie, constantly nudging her to check her glucose and eat at the right time.
Ellie, dear, did you check your levels?
Her mother asked for the third time that morning. Ellie groaned.
Yes, Mother. I always check my levels.
The smothering bear let out a deep, approving hum and nudged Ellie again. Ellie swatted its oversized paw away.
Enough!
Her mother frowned but said nothing. The bear continued to hover. Ellie's fists clenched. With a deep breath, Ellie grabbed her satchel and stormed out the door. The open road stretched ahead, winding past hills and scattered trees. Ellie breathed in the freedom, relishing the quiet, until she felt the tug. Her cannular tubing had kinked. Groaning, she stopped and rolled her eyes. She unhooked her pump, muttering under her breath, as she prepared for a set change. Once completed, frustrated but determined, she continued on, only to be halted again. Another kink, another set change. Canular Kinkers, tiny, mischievous creatures that lurked unseen, were already causing trouble. She kicked the dirt in frustration.
Could you just leave me alone for one day?
As Ellie prepared yet another set change, she heard a commotion in the bushes, a frantic squeaking sound. She followed the noise and found a tiny Hypoglycemia hedgehog backed into a corner by Gluco Gremlins, sharp-toothed little creatures that thrived on unstable glucose levels. The Hypoglycemia squealed and swiped its tiny paws, but the gremlins only cackled. Ellie didn't hesitate. Grabbing a nearby branch, she charged at the creatures.
Get away from him!
The gremlins shrieked and scattered into the woods. Ellie knelt beside the hedgehog, who stared up at her with round, grateful eyes. Around his tiny waist was a satchel of diabetes supplies. Ellie looked at the curled-up hogger.
Do you want to come with me?
Ellie asked. The tiny Hypoglycemia nodded. Ellie and the Hypoglycemia continued down the road. Ellie started to tell the hedgehog all about her life back home, but it wasn't long before the Gluco Gremlins returned, this time in larger numbers.
You've got to be kidding me.
Ellie muttered. She grabbed a fallen log, holding it like a club.
Why don't you pick on someone your own size?
The gremlins lunged and Ellie swung. She knocked two back but more swarmed around her. Then, as if it couldn't get any worse, the Canular Kinkers returned, twisting at her tubing. She wasn't fighting long before her pump started to alarm.
Not now!
Ellie gritted her teeth. Her chest heaved. It was too much. Snatching up Hogs, she dove into a nearby ditch, tumbling into the mud. She pressed her back against the damp earth, her breath ragged. The Gluco Gremlins chattered above, searching for her. Then the ground beneath her shifted. Dark clawed hands emerged from the dirt, Burnout Burrowers. The mole-like creatures whispered as they began to scurry around her.
Why fight?
They whispered.
It's all too much, isn't it? Just give up. Rest!
Ellie struggled, but exhaustion weighed her down. The burrowers piled the mud higher. She couldn't breathe. For the first time, she called for help. Even through the suffocating mud, Ellie heard a shout. Then the clash of metal, the screeching of retreating gremlins, the sound of a sword slicing through the air. Suddenly a paw broke through the mud and grabbed her, pulling her up into the fading sunlight. You're safe now. Ellie blinked, coughing out dirt. A knight in armor and a positivity panda stood over her, the knight's warm smile beneath his battle-worn face. I am Sir Endo, and this is my DiaPal pads, he said, helping her to her feet. I am a knight from the healthcare professional headquarters. Of course, Ellie had heard of the HCP HQ and their elite knights, mages and rangers. She had always dreamed of becoming a ranger herself. I saw you beating back those Gluco Gremlins. That was impressive. You should come with us, Endo said. I'm looking for a new squire. What do you say? Ellie glanced down at her hogger, who nodded.
I say, where's our first adventure?
Endo chuckled.
Glucovale. They're being terrorized by a hypertroll. So what shall we call you two?
I'm Ellie, and this is...
Ellie paused for a moment and looked down at her Hypoglycemia.
Hogs!
Ellie answered. The hedgehog smiled. So, Ellie, Endo, Hogs and Pad set off down the road toward Glucovale. Ellie learnt that even the strongest knights needed help, and help is always there to be found, even when you're in the darkest of places.